guys, welcome back to Starting with a Story. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we have an old friend of mine that I met at Villanova University. He's a crazy awesome individual. His name is Sam White. You guys might know him as Sam WhiteOut. That's like his name, his little cool name that really awesome. So say hi to Sam. Hello everyone.
How's it going, y'all? Man, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm glad we got to catch up and chat. It's been too long.
Yeah, of course, man, of course. So since the last I've seen you, like three or 4 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, something like that. Because I graduated, I left in 2015.
Okay, yeah, so I graduated in 17, so yeah, about like 3 years or so. What have you been up to, man? What's been good in the life of Sam?
Yeah, so basically what happened was I graduated in December of 2014 from Villanova. And in January of 2015, I was hosting an event in Boston with my fraternity brothers as a part of Kappa Alpha Psi. And we had a video that went viral.
Oh, sick.
And so it was a video of us strolling together, and strolling is like a historically black Greek letter organization, almost like a dance. We'll do it at like parties and cookouts and step shows and things like that. So this video goes viral, and then all of a sudden all these other videos start going viral, and all of my social media accounts start sort of exploding. And so what happened then was I made the decision to say, okay, I did a lot of politics and, really spent a lot of my time in undergraduate organizing and activism. Let me see if we can scale this. Let me see if we can use this platform that I've been sort of gifted out of nowhere to make a difference. And so since then, I have been working with some amazing companies and activists, whether it's BET and MTV or Ray McKesson and other prominent, activists across the country. I travel and I speak at high schools and colleges, and we talk about civic engagement and how to make the most of your day and all that corny stuff that we don't get enough time to talk about, but it's important. So it's been a wild few years, but it's been great.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's awesome, and I'm really hyped for you. And it's so crazy that you are using your, I guess, leverage or your following or whatever you want to call it for the betterment of society and the future generations, whether it be high schools or colleges or wherever you go to. I think that's really commendable and that's awesome. So thank you so much for...
I appreciate that, man. It's funny. I think that it's a very natural extension of the work that we were doing together at Villanova, right? When we were working on the diversity skit and trying to, bring an element to orientation that was going to let the freshmen know that they should go outside of what they know, that they should expand their horizons in very real, practical ways, particularly at a place like Villanova, which is overwhelmingly white and overwhelmingly Christian, and there was a number of ways in which it was very homogenous.
Yeah, for sure.
So the stuff that you and I did in undergrad is essentially the same stuff that I'm doing, just a different scale, a slightly different vehicle.
Yeah, 100%. So you briefly touched on it now, but what I want to start with is, as the podcast suggests, it's starting with a story. So we kind of want to hear more about how you started and how you came from as a white individual to eventually join a historically black fraternity to doing the work that you're doing now. But what happened all the way back at the beginning when Sam was a little boy and growing up and doing his thing? Like, what was that like in your experience throughout your journey?
Sure. So, the best way that I can explain it is that I grew up in a household where we didn't change the subject. Where, whether it was something that came up on the news or something that got brought up at school, whatever the case may be, it could be during family movie night. If there was a moment where like my sister or I had a question, and again, this is not to say that it was always, intensely academic, like, pass the broccoli and define institutional racism. Like it wasn't weird. It was just very natural. We just didn't change the subject when something came up. And that, I think, gave me a very different lens than I would say most white folks growing up, maybe even people.
100%.
Because I just wasn't averse to talking about things that I didn't understand or talking about things that I wasn't comfortable with. So, for example, I would grow up, like one of the movies we would watch during movie night was In the Heat of the Night, which is Sidney Poitier. It's like 1967. And it's the story of, there's a murder in southern, I think it's Mississippi. There's a murder, and they call in this black police detective from Philadelphia to help solve the case. And he, of course, experiences profound racism and is almost killed a couple times and he's got to solve the murder mystery.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a scene where Sidney Poitier is being chased by this small lynch mob of about 4 or 5 guys who are trying to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
And the police chief, who has, at this point in the movie, already demonstrated that he is also racist, sort of comes upon this scene and actually defends Sidney Poitier and saves his life. And I was like 9, and I'm like, wait, I'm confused.
Yeah, seriously.
So they paused the movie, and I was like, I don't get it. They're like, well, what don't you get? Well, I thought that the police chief was a bad guy too. Like, and we talked about it for like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. Like, well, he is, he clearly has these problems, but he's not about to just let another cop get killed. But so he's convicted, and there's this going on and that going on. I was like, oh, okay, well, I mean, that's a lot, but I mean, it kind of makes, and it was one of those things where it did not ruin family movie night. It didn't turn it into a classroom, but that kind of stuff happened all the time.
Yeah. Wow. That's so different from like pretty much every other childhood I've heard of.
Yeah. I just think that I was really, really lucky to grow up where I had to learn how weird my upbringing was. For a while, it was the only thing I knew, so that it was normal. I thought that everyone was sort of predisposed to talking about things, whether it was regarding race or gender or sexuality or random stuff like math and Harry Potter. Like, I just thought all of these things were in the same sphere. And then you get older and you start to learn, the classic, like, don't talk about politics and don't talk about religion. And
yeah.
I'm kind of like, why not? We talk about it all the time.
Yeah, this is what I do.
Right?
So
I think, it was a really interesting way to grow up, and I think it oriented me to new ideas in a way that I wasn't afraid of them. And I think that if you're taught to be afraid of new ideas, then it's understandable why you're going to be hesitant to talk about them. And so a lot of my work now focuses on sort of creating a new norm and saying that it's okay and it's normal to talk about things, to talk about race if you're a white guy, to talk about gender if you're a man. Like, this shouldn't be weird. We should actually encourage it.
Amen. 100%. So for the theme for this season is people who are following their passions, and you've clearly demonstrated that you're doing so, but just for the audience, how would you describe your passion, and how would you describe how you're pursuing that on an everyday basis?
Yeah, so I think that my passion is twofold. One of the parts is kind of selfish, but I don't think in a bad way. And that part is I want to be better today than I was yesterday.
Amen,
and I want to be better tomorrow than I was today. It's super corny, but it's true.
Yeah, seriously.
Whether it's personally, professionally, health-wise, like whatever the case may be, I see no reason to stop improving. And I think that's selfish in a productive way. I think the other piece of it is I want to not only be surrounded by, but I want to be somewhat, sort of able to pay it forward in terms of making other people better. In terms, like, I know the time and energy and the love that went into me being able to be the person I am, whether it comes from friends or family or teachers or people I've never met, artists, singers, whatever the case may be. And I want to be able to do that for others. And I think that the vehicle through which I can do that is to try and find ways to use my platform in whatever way I can to talk about the things we don't get to talk about, to offer people a place where they can try out new ideas. They can be self-reflective, not in some sort of guilty way or in a way, but in like a legitimate way. Like, how can I be a better person? What things do to improve? And that's part of the reason why I try and be so transparent with what I'm doing and how I do it.
Yeah, man, there's so much to dive into there, but the first thing that kind of pops up into my mind is I like your unique perspective on why you want to pay it forward, because so much has gone into you and the people around you. So who are your biggest supporters? Who are your biggest role models that really keep you going and keep you motivated to, do the work that you're doing to help the future generations or society or whatever?
Yeah. Well, it's crazy. I think there's so many, and that's the part that I always get to remind myself I'm so lucky. Right? So, I had a very, as you know, right? Like, I had a very difficult experience in the first half of my career at Villanova,
That's
right?
Gracious. That, yeah.
And, I think that in that moment there, my dad was an amazing resource. Folks like Brett and Kelsey, Josh, like, these are people who were there for me and paid it forward when they had no reason to. But even on a slightly less dramatic level, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I have found inspiration in Toni Morrison, in James
Okay.
Baldwin, through Taekwondo,
Mm-hmm.
through, even not just through Taekwondo and the folks who mentored me, but through the team that I
Mm-hmm.
started and my teammates, and
Yeah.
seeing the way that it had an effect on them, like that was more motivation for me than
Mm-hmm.
anything else.
Mm.
Uh, and so I think that it's really it's a something for which I will always be grateful, that whenever I'm in doubt, I have 1,000 people I can turn to and say,
Mm.
I'm not sure about this. Like, what do you think?
Mm.
And they're going to want me to succeed.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that. I love that. And so when you look to these people and they motivate you or what have you, what is your end goal? What's your mission that you want to accomplish for these people or for the people that support you and the people that you hope to inspire?
Yeah, so I think that there are a number of ways in which all of there are like there's sort of an umbrella, right?
Mm.
And for
Okay.
me, that umbrella is be you, be great, and it's what I talk about all the time. And under that umbrella, I can have all kinds of sub goals, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think part of what we're doing is normalizing, frankly, giving a shit about people who are different than you.
Mm.
They look different, or they talk different, or walk different, or pray differently, like whatever the
Mm.
case may be. It shouldn't be weird for me to care about communities that are not my own, for you to
Mm.
care about communities that are not your own. We should normalize them. And I think that on the other side of things, I think there are a million and one ways in which we bump into obstacles and things we have to jump over and climb through to figure out how we can be ourselves and just be
Mm.
fucking comfortable in that skin,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And my goal is to try and break down as many of those obstacles as we can, because a
Mm.
lot of them we're not going to be able to do anything about.
Mm-hmm.
Figuring out who you are as a person is difficult.
Yeah.
But there's a whole slew of those obstacles and barriers that we put up,
Yeah.
that are man-made in a sense, that we can tear down and
Mm-hmm.
make the process a bit easier, particularly for kids. Like I think that you know I can't even fathom growing up with social media the way that kids who are even 15, 16 now grew up with it. And if we can use that digital platform to tell them that they're worth it, that they're enough, that they're
Mm.
valuable, then I think that we've already seen the ways in which that can be a powerful tool towards
Mm.
building community. And actually, President Clinton had an interesting quote. He was talking about the political climate we're in right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it can be really hectic. And he said,
Mm-hmm.
well, at the end of the day, we're in the business of expanding the definition of us
Mm.
and constricting the definition of them,
Hmm.
right? And if we think about it that
Yeah.
way, then it's a proselytizing, inclusive attitude
Mm-hmm.
and sort of a self-righteous one.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, you got a lot of good stuff to say. I love this.
It's
um,
all great questions. I'm just feeding off of you.
oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. So another thing that really I resonated with was your mission of just trying to break down those barriers.
Mm-hmm.
And from my understanding, from my experience with retreat work and whatnot, those barriers are very difficult to break sometimes, especially if it's not in the right environment. So how do you go about meeting new people or new events or venues and strangers and being able to break that barrier in a quick amount of time? Like, what do you do and how do you accomplish that? Because these barriers are super difficult to break, especially in like public settings.
Yeah.
So how do you go about tackling that problem?
Well, I think on a small scale, whether it's like you jump into an Uber or
Mm-hmm.
you bump into somebody at a bar or something very informal, you got to meet people where they're at.
Mm.
Now, obviously, that does not extend to sort of objective, hate-based
Mm-hmm.
situations, but that largely speaking, like you're going to find more success if you can meet people where they're at and try and nudge them a little bit in the right direction, rather than say, well, you're there and I'm here,
Mm-hmm.
so hurry your ass up,
Yeah.
right? That's a
Yeah.
very different attitude. So I think that is an orientation, an approach that I bring to just the way that I live my life every
Mm.
day. But I'm really lucky. I get to travel and I get to go speak with high school students, college students, and meet new folks and
Mm-hmm.
create the space for the kinds of conversations
Mm-hmm.
that we don't get to have. And part of that, like you said, is the environment. Like,
Mm-hmm.
In my role as the sort of the event speaker, like it's part
Mm-hmm.
of my job is to create that umbrella, to
Yeah.
define implicitly or explicitly what that environment is,
Mm-hmm.
what we're willing to accept, what the goals are.
Like
And then from
beforehand.
there, exactly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or during, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you can shape it the same way that we shaped the diversity skit, right? And we created for them a little world in which we could talk about certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get to do that. And then because I'm in control of what that environment looks like,
Mm-hmm.
that gives people the opportunity to chip in a way that they might not have been able to do before,
Mm.
to float out ideas that they may not have been comfortable floating out before.
Mm.
Or sometimes not even participating, but listening in a way that they hadn't before.
Mm. Yeah.
And other perspectives that they were like, well, I hadn't heard it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, I wasn't in a headspace where I could have heard that same thing 3 weeks ago or a year ago, and it wouldn't process the same way.
Mm.
And that I think is huge, and it speaks to your point about the environment. The environment can make or break the conversation.
Yeah, 100%. What have you seen as like the biggest change in the way you approach these speakings or these events that you participate in?
Yeah, so I think that what's been interesting for me as I've grown and kind of matured and gotten more experience is being much more comfortable with the reality that it's the same message no matter where I go, no matter who I talk to. Like my job is to tell the truth. I am a truth teller no matter where I am or to whom I'm speaking or what we're talking about. What can change though is how I tell the truth, right? How do you communicate it? What examples do you use? How do you interact with folks during things like Q&A, which is my favorite part of any event, right? Like, how can we, again, create an environment where people are going to want to participate, to want to lean in to whatever we're talking about, whether it's uncomfortable, comfortable, whatever the case may be. That's part of it, right? And so for me, it's about figuring out, you know, who am I talking to? What motivates them? What issues are they having? What struggle, you know, what bothers them? What excites them? Like, how can we, you know, connect in a very organic and natural way without being, because I'm not trying to be like, you know, welcome to Wichita. Like, you know, it's good to be here. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, we don't need to fake it.
Dude, that seems just like you though. What are you talking about?
Right? Like we can just talk about, to be honest, like part of it, to be very frank, is just be fucking real. It's like, don't make shit up. Don't be fake. And then you're going to find that people are a hell of a lot more interested in being genuine with you if you're genuine with them. And that was, I think, interesting for me, not because, you know, somehow I was like faking it at first, but you kind of have this thing of like, okay, well, I want to make the most of my time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And part of it is being able to sit back and relax and be like, all right, I know we're going to get to X, Y, and Z, and we're going to go off on all these different tangents. And I'm cool with that because at the end of the day, we're talking about the same message.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I resonate a lot with that because a lot of times we've emphasized too much of like making sure we hit every single little point, but at the same time, like you don't take the time to really just adapt with your environment, adapt with the conversation, and really take it, because regardless, at the end of the day, like you said, you're going to hit the certain topics because that's just how the conversation flows. So I really resonate with that point that, you know, just really be in the moment and focus on the conversation that's happening right there and right now.
And, you know, I think the strategy behind it is fundamentally that we may not hit all the details, but at the end of the day, all the details serve that same umbrella. So whether we're talking through the lens of race or gender or sexuality or whatever, we're still fundamentally talking about the same concepts of right and wrong and how to get involved and how we can make the most of our time. So it's not as dramatic as it might be in the movies, but sometimes you got to throw the script away and be like, all right, well, I guess we're going to talk about this now. And that's okay, because at the end of the day, it's just a question of the vehicle for the same message. That's the fun part, is getting to travel and see all these different vehicles and hear all these different stories, because at the end of the day, there's a hell of a lot more in common with each other than they might necessarily know.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of things that I appreciate in what you're doing is the fact that you're hitting on so many different topics that are so difficult to talk about and that not many people are doing enough of. But a common comment that I hear from people is that they don't know enough. They lack the education regarding that topic. So, you know, they don't feel comfortable engaging in conversation because they don't know too much about it. What do you have to say to that sort of mindset?
Well, first of all, that's a great question because I think that part of the problem here is that the biggest barrier that we have to these conversations are self-imposed barriers. They're ones where we're like, well, I'm not sure, or I don't want to offend people, or I don't want to say the wrong thing. And at the end of the day, like I kind of compare this in a slightly clumsy analogy to like a roundabout circle in traffic, like driving.
Okay.
And as a new driver, you're kind of like, shit, like it's not a light. Like, what do I do, right? And it's actually easier than anything else. You literally only have to look one way, and you're like,
it's just you're in this lane.
You miss your exit, cool. Let me just go around again. That's fine, right? And you know what I'm saying? It's really so much more simple than we think. So I think that there's two components to not feeling like you're ready to have the conversation. The first, which is kind of the hard ass component, is use Google. Like, this shit is not that hard. You literally
have the power of the internet.
So much of this, and give yourself like a nice little surface level background that you can use as a base to start building. And the other part is a little hard ass too, actually. It's not an excuse to not know what's going on. Like it's like when people get concerned about, well, I can't do this 24 hours a day, so I'm not going to do it at all. It's like, no, like that doesn't make any sense. Like, we don't need everyone to run for Congress, but we really need everybody to vote. Right? So the sort of finding an excuse to be able to say, well, I wasn't really ready, or I couldn't commit. Relax. Like, the problem is not that ignorance can have you say things that are wrong. It's that if you're uncomfortable and you get defensive, then when you say something wrong and somebody's like, well, actually, that's not true. You're like, oh, I didn't mean it. It was my bad. Like, you know what I'm saying? And then you run away. You don't need to do that. It's okay. Say all the time, like, oh, I was wrong. Or like, that's the whole point. We should be part of getting better means you have to realize that you were imperfect.
Yeah. Oh, like, yeah.
That's okay. Like, he's obviously like, very much canceled, but Louis C.K. had this thing, and I know, we'll pretend it wasn't him, but this thing he said, part of you're only a good parent if your kids make you feel like an idiot. Because that means your kids are smarter than you and should be smarter than you, because if you're doing your job as a parent, you should be raising kids that are smarter than you. Yeah. And so it's like that, but on a just you and you verse, like me a year ago versus me now versus me in 10 years, right? And so I think that whether it's concerns over not knowing enough, concerns over not being able to commit enough time, whatever the concern may be, it's ultimately something that you can control. Yeah. And where you do mess up or where things may not go perfectly, like those are actually the most important moments when you take a step back and just not have to cancel the whole project, right?
Yeah, I love that. I've been reading a lot of material that really talks about the importance of being able to swallow your pride or your ego and being okay with failing or being wrong, and that not many people, everyone isn't okay with being wrong, and they always want to be right, and
because it can be embarrassing.
Yeah,
for sure.
100%. And they say the biggest growth moments, like you just mentioned, are in those moments where you did find yourself that you lacked a little bit, or you didn't reach the heights that you set, and that's such an important concept that I feel more people need to hear about. So thank you for bringing that up. I really resonate with that.
For sure. Because the other thing is, it's not as if we're sort of creating sort of a laundry list of ways you can say, well, see, I didn't mean to say something really, really fucking racist, but see, I'm improving, I'm trying, right? It's like, no, like, you can't just like, oh, I said the N-word. Like, no, like, clearly you should have known beforehand not to do that, right? It's not like we're creating like a blank check for bad decisions, but that we're leaving room for growth,
So throughout your journey, when did you first start becoming an advocate, just speaking up and saying your points of view to really help educate the people around you?
For sure. So I think, hard as it may be to believe, I've always been a bit talkative and perhaps even argumentative. But for me, what changed was at Villanova, I had always been involved in politics and sort of to date and was always very opinionated. when I had those unpleasant experiences at Villanova and was embraced by folks like Josh and the rest of the Black community and the kids that gave a shit at Villanova, it was not as much an opportunity to be an advocate and to be an ally and to be an activist, but it was a responsibility. It was something. It was a decision I had already made in my head. It was just a matter of acting on it. And the same thing was true when those videos went viral. I was not about. It was really a foregone conclusion that I was going to try and do the right thing and use this platform for good, because otherwise, could I really say that I believed in all the things that I said?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. So since that time at Villanova where you feel that you truly started to advocating, what have you seen as like the biggest changes from then to now about activism and allyship and tackling all these different problems, and what do you think has gotten better or what has gotten worse in that time as well?
That's a great question. So I think there's probably 4 major things that we can point to, and they're in no particular order. But like the first is, there is a very different conversation going around about activism, particularly in the graduate space. Like there is a whole lexicon and infrastructure where we're taking seriously, I think, undergraduate activists in a way that we didn't before. And that has pros and cons, right? It can sometimes complicate the situation. For example, like when we were in school, to be very frank, it was kind of like, it's fucked up, somebody's got to fix it. Like we don't, it doesn't matter what we call it. Now I think there's so many more resources. And part of that leads into the second thing that's changed, which is social media has radically transformed the way in which people can be civically engaged, politically engaged in activism. You look at the way in which the Black Lives Matter protesters in Ferguson, whether it was in Ferguson or in Baltimore or in Florida, Trayvon Martin, right? Like these were not national news stories until Black Lives Matter made them national news stories. And those are conversations that have been transformed. I mean, I would argue that the deaths of Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown transformed the landscape of this country politically forever. Part of that, too, is representation has changed in very substantial ways. And by no means are any of these things sort of fixed. But you look at the way in which Black victims were treated in comparison to white criminals in 2014, particularly with, case in point, Mike Brown. CNN, MSNBC, we're not counting Fox because obviously, they have a much different, they still fuck up, but not the same, not with the same frequency, not with the same severity, in terms of using the appropriate photos, in terms of referring to victims in appropriate ways and realizing that they were human beings. So there's a lot of progress to be made there. You even look in the pop culture in terms of the way that Black Panther, I don't think that could have happened in 2014. I think it should have happened forever ago.
But probably
could have. It's a slightly different question. And so we see the huge success there, which is a perfect, almost like starter case to say, look, marginalized communities and their stories matter, and they are profitable, right? White people turned out to see Black Panther just as much as anybody else, because if it was just Black folks, it would not have crossed $1 billion. It would have not made $350 million in China and all these other things. And I think the last thing that has changed is we are in a much more chaotic political environment, and it's exhausting both physically, emotionally, intellectually to deal with the onslaught of bullshit. And so that's where it can become even more dangerous, where you say, well, I can't keep up with everything, so I'm not going to keep up with anything at all. And that's the dangerous part. So we have to sort of push ourselves to say, I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to engage as much as possible, and then a little bit more. But I also need to know when I need to give myself a break, when I need to recover and kind of make sure that I can keep doing everything I got to do, because life is going to move on, whether or not we're ready.
Right. So going off that last part, what's a piece of advice you would give to someone, or what's something that we all can do as individuals to help this conversation, to help this movement, to help this sort of change that's happening for the better? What can we all do? What is your advice to
Okay.
the people.
So the number one thing, there is no excuse for not voting, whether it's a national election, a
Mm-hmm.
state election, or your local school
Mm-hmm.
board. Like, the elections have consequences, as I think we have all learned. And so getting out the vote, encouraging your friends to vote, berating your friends to vote if you need to,
Mm.
is so, so important. It can be difficult. A lot of us are young and we move around, whether it's college,
Mm-hmm.
work. Figure it out. It's okay, right? But
Mm.
like, figuring out how to make sure you can vote. I think that's the first thing.
Mm.
The second thing is to listen, not to just hear people, but to listen to them,
Mm-hmm.
to see what
Mm.
drives them, what motivates them, where are they coming from. Like,
Mm.
if you're mad, why are you mad? If you're hurt, why are you hurt? If you're excited, why are you excited? One of the biggest things that we talk about in sort of the protest world is, you look at a situation like what happened in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
And why are the people were asking, well, why did you burn down the CVS? Or that was Ferguson. But why are you destroying property? Is
Mm-hmm.
this trope that keeps coming up? No one's asking, well, why are you angry to the point that you feel that that is your only course of action?
Mm-hmm.
And it's fundamentally almost the same question.
Mm.
But if we take a step back, and instead of asking, well, why did you do this, or this was wrong, or whatever, what brings you to the point that you decided to do that?
Right, right.
And so that's not some bullshit hippie crap about, we just want to understand and every kumbaya. No, it's like, in order to understand your point and in order to understand why you're doing what you're doing, I need to understand you.
Mm.
So taking the time to read articles from perspectives that you're not familiar with, books that you're not familiar with, actually entertain the idea that you may not be right about everything, which is okay.
Yeah.
I think that can be huge, and that's something that you can carry with you, whether it's
In all aspects of life.
today or tomorrow or in 20 years.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. So switching gears a little bit, going back to you, what is something that you still struggle with when you're trying to, follow your passions and your pursuits and being the advocate in your career?
Yeah, well, for me, it's a question of what is going to be most effective, not necessarily what's going to be the most cathartic for me. And those are two different questions. So being selective about when I respond to criticism, respond to trolls, even the idea of responding to ideas. Like, I am not going to stand up and sort of argue with white supremacy. It's wrong. I'm not going to waste my time necessarily explaining that. We can talk about the ways in which white supremacy is active on a daily basis and the ways it's institutionalized, and we got to stop this, that, and the third. That's fine. But like, I'm not in the business of going into the white community and like trying to recruit white supremacists to not supremacists. Right? There are people who do that. I've worked with groups who go into hate-based organizations and sort of offer people a way out. But that's not my efficacy. My efficacy is working with activists and communities that are engaged to be strategic about that, and to work with the folks who kind of need that little bit of a nudge to get involved, right? Folks who already know how they feel about this, that, and the third, but aren't quite sure about what to do about it. That's where I think I can be most effective. And so being considerate about that and trying to always get better at being strategic about what I'm doing, who am I talking to, and how are we talking about these issues, how are we framing them, and how can I boost other folks who are doing amazing work, right? So like behind the scenes, all the time, people hit me up about, oh, we want you to do this, that, and the third. Okay, well, actually, who'd be really great for that? Alencia is doing amazing parenthood. You should talk to her. Or Brittany is doing phenomenal stuff over here about education policy and criminal justice reform. You should talk to her. Being able to sort of jump in and out of stepping up to speaking up in a way that is appropriate, passing the mic.
Yeah. Oh man, that's awesome. That's very humbling, I feel, and it shows a lot of awareness in you and what you believe your role is in this whole, I don't know, situation, that's happening. I'm struggling with the words, you know?
No, it's tough, but I appreciate that. I mean, at the end of the day, teamwork makes the dream work.
Yeah, amen.
And nobody, you can. There's a million and one phrase. No man is an island type of crap. Like at the
Hmm.
end of the day, we're not going to be able to do it all in a day. We're not going to be able to do it
Hmm.
all in a week, and we're certainly damn sure not going to be able to do it all by ourselves.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
figuring out Chris Hayes, he has a TV show on MSNBC. He's a fantastic commentator and journalist. He
Hmm.
has this analogy about like a football kickoff.
Okay.
So fuck the NFL and all that, but if you're on kickoff, if every single person runs to the ball, then the other team is going to be easily able to set up some blocks, run to the other side of the field, and you're screwed.
Mm. Mm.
So if I can recognize that the ball may be over there, but I need to stay running straight this way so that they can't come this way, right? Like
Yeah, that's a
that's
great analogy. Yeah.
the team.
Hmm.
And it's not always that simple at all.
Yeah.
The idea of we are all pursuing the same end goal, and that doesn't necessarily mean we're all going to move the exact same way.
Mm. Mm. What do you think is the biggest misconception in your line of work or your journey, I guess?
Ooh, that's a good one. The biggest misconception is that being politically engaged or being an activist means you have to be poor or upset or angry or unfulfilled
Hmm.
or unsatisfied, right? We have
Yeah.
this, we simultaneously put activists on a pedestal as we enjoy tearing that pedestal down.
Mm.
We have this idea that to be an activist or to be an ally or an advocate means that you have to do this 25 hours a day, that it's the only part of you that exists.
Mm.
And like me, just as anybody else, we're full people. Like I love music and I love movies and I love this and I love that. Like, and I believe in being politically engaged, and I may dedicate an abnormal amount of my time towards it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a misconception about the all or nothing mentality,
Hmm.
as well as the, well, if you're going to be an activist, like, oh, but you like some bullshit like DeRay will get attacked because he likes Doritos.
Hmm.
Oh, sold out for Doritos. What? Can the man not like some snacks? Right?
Yeah.
So whether it's an absurd example like that or a more subtle example where we're talking about, activism and civic engagement as if it has to be sort of self-deprecating,
Mm.
when that's not the case, and that's not true historically.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. What do you think people aren't talking enough about of? Did I word that correctly? What do you think people aren't talking enough about right now? Yeah, there you go.
Voting rights. The answer is
Voting rights. Mm.
we can talk about the issues all day long, but at the end of
Hmm.
the day, if it's not a free and fair election where everyone who
Hmm.
should have the right to vote is granted the right to vote,
Hmm.
then it doesn't mean anything. We are seeing gerrymandering, which is a fancy word for basically hand-picking
Hmm.
your voters and like hand-picking your districts
Hmm.
to make sure that you win, even if you don't get as many votes. Like
Yeah.
we have to tackle voting rights in a way that is sustainable, in a way that's cements voting rights as just important to us as the freedom of speech, as the freedom of anything. Like, because if you can't vote, then what does that freedom of speech really get you?
Yeah.
So I think talking about that is boring
Hmm.
because it's not sexy like all these other issues,
Yeah.
but it's the whole ballgame.
Yeah. If you don't have that, you don't really have the means of making an action and
Yeah.
really making it, implementing it into everyday life sort of thing. It's just kind of, you just can talk about it, but nothing's going to happen.
And it's also an issue where I think people underestimate the impact that they can have.
Hmm. Yeah.
We have seen cases of gerrymandering being remedied. We have seen it be rejected.
Hmm.
People stand up and said, no, this is wrong. Like this is not how this is supposed to work.
Yeah.
So we actually have a lot of room to be impactful. We just have to decide to do it.
100%. When you are facing a person who has beliefs or values and views that are directly opposing yours, how do you go about that conversation to not just dismiss it and really just have that essential conversation and turn it into a discussion and really listen to the other person's perspective? How do you go about that situation?
Sure. So there's a fine line between wasting your time and investing your time. So,
Mm.
if the disagreement is about whether or not all people deserve human rights, whether or not black people deserve to not be shot by the police, whether women deserve to go to college campuses and not have to fear for rape, like if those
Mm-hmm.
are the disagreements that we're having, well then I have no interest in wasting my time. I have other things to do,
Mm.
right? And I can't meet you where you're at because it's past the line that I've drawn that I'm not willing to cross.
Right.
If though we're talking about that gray area,
Mm-hmm.
where it's yes, you recognize that everyone deserves human rights and that there's a problem in the way that police, go into black communities. But you think, maybe we're having a respectability conversation. It's like, well, at the same time, people need to be more respectful to the police. It's like,
Mm.
okay, we can have that conversation. You're wrong, but we can have that conversation because
Mm.
I can talk to you about the examples where where people did everything that the police told them to do, and
Right.
they were still killed. Or we can
Mm.
talk about the ways in which police unions have put all their chips into making sure that cops are free from accountability, which is actually bad for cops,
Mm.
right? We can talk about those issues, and I think that part of it is because these are issues that I'm comfortable talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it is because I know where that line is, and
Mm.
I'm honest with myself about
Right. Right.
how
Right.
I figured out where that line is, and sometimes it moves, but I know it's there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is the question of how I figure out how a conversation is going to flow, how it can be effective, or
Mm.
I need to take a step back.
Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of these topics, they all, inherently kind of come with negativity, stress, and just overwhelming emotions. So how do you go about handling those emotions, those different negativities, and either change that or either process it in a way that becomes your fuel?
Sure. So we all need our outlets.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I mean, there's plenty of things for which I don't feel the need to register a public opinion on Twitter or at a public event or on Instagram or whatever. There's plenty of things that are just fine to stay with, text with my homies and the group chats,
Mm-hmm.
right? That can be cathartic too. So, I don't know that it's necessarily about controlling the emotions. I think it's about channeling them, right?
Mm-hmm.
For example, right now, like people are angry and
Mm.
we should be angry. It's not enough to just be angry,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm going to use that anger, right? I'm going to channel that into strategy. I think that strategy that is not informed by emotion
Mm.
is, dead on arrival.
Yeah.
I think that emotion without strategy is a waste of energy.
Mm.
So if we can find that middle ground where whatever the emotion is, whether we're talking about sadness or anger or being excited and enthusiastic about something,
Mm.
channeling that to be productive is the question at hand.
Right, right. And you sort of mentioned this just now, but I like to ask my guests, like, what do you do for you? Just
Yeah.
just a little side note. It's a little different.
I'm like on one a super. I don't know. Maybe this is corny. Sometimes I'll just go for a walk. Like
Mm.
it's like I actually just need some time, or I'll take
Right.
a shower. Like I feel like I do my best thinking,
Mhm.
like in the shower or driving.
Oh, respect. Amen.
I don't have a car in New York, so
Mhm.
sometimes. Well, I already showered today. Well, I need to do. I need.
You're going in there again. It's happening.
I'm about to stay very clean.
Hmm.
Or for me, it's like I like to read whenever I
Yeah.
can, but I'm always reading two books. I'm reading one for fun, and I'm reading one that is more sort of political, shall we say,
Mhm.
and that can be difficult. Like, Wesley Lowery has this amazing book called "They Can't Kill Us All," which is about
Mm.
how he, as a journalist, covered a whole bunch of different police shootings.
Mhm.
That's heavy shit.
Yeah,
I can't just be reading that every
that would
single
be way
day.
too intense. Oh my gosh.
Right. So I've got, my murder mysteries and my stuff like that. And sometimes it's just I need 20 minutes
Mm.
to just read a little bit of that and say, okay, cool, now I can go back to work or whatever the case.
What are some of your personal habits that you utilize to really get you going throughout the days, throughout the weeks and months, that keeps you going?
Shoot. I mean, I'm very social. I'm like,
Mm.
I an hour with my friends can feel like rejuvenate me for like weeks, you know?
Mm,
And I think being honest about that and like
mm-hmm.
leaning into it, I think is really important. When I was a kid, my dad used to always say, you know, the only difference between procrastination and like sort of giving yourself a carrot and a stick kind of thing
Mm-hmm.
is whether or not it works.
Hmm. Yeah, that's
So
pretty valid. Yeah.
procrastination for you might be the way that I get shit done.
Mm,
Um, so I feel like that was a little vague. I think by that I mean that we have this idea that working hard and working efficiently looks the same for everyone, and that's not the
mm-hmm.
case. Which
Right.
means you have to experiment, and sometimes you will fuck up, and you will find a million and one different ways that don't work for you.
Mm.
I don't enjoy getting up at 4:45 in the morning. Like,
Yeah.
read all that shit about how, you know, if you can train yourself to do that. No,
Right.
fuck that.
Right.
Absolutely not. No, like I
Yeah.
can't, uninterested.
Yeah.
But it works for some people. I know other people, I know some of my friends who will like, you know, when they have a free day, they'll like sleep till 2.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been able to do that since college.
Yeah. Yeah.
It like makes me feel uncomfortable. I'm like, the day is gone,
Yeah,
right?
there's nothing there.
Whether it's a sleep schedule or anything else, like being creative about what works for you and what doesn't, and admitting to yourself sometimes like, wow, like that actually doesn't work, even though it works for
Mm-hmm.
everybody else. Like I can't do that. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't drink caffeine. I don't
Yeah.
drink coffee.
Yeah, me
I just
neither.
don't. And I got
Mm-hmm.
tired. Like life is too short. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Yeah, I think that's super important just to figure out like what works for you because I think there's so much emphasis on, oh, here are the keys. And I think humans in general are just super enthusiastic about finding like that perfect recipe or that perfect system that
Yeah.
works. But like it doesn't. That's not a thing. And most things aren't going to have that perfect recipe. It's just basically based on you as a person, who you are, and what
And
works for you.
sometimes it's just laborious. Sometimes you just
Mm.
have to truck through. You know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So we are coming to the around the end of our interview. I like to ask three questions, but before I'm like tripping up on my words today. But before
So,
I ask that, I just wanted to ask you. You mentioned books and whatnot. Do you have any book recommendations for leisure and also for anyone who's wanting to get into advocacy and allyship and this whole conversation? What are some of the
yeah.
greatest books that they can start reading?
So I think everyone in the world should read James Baldwin.
Okay.
Pick anything that you want by James Baldwin, but just read
Anything.
James Baldwin.
Hmm.
Um, I think a great book, if you are unfamiliar with some of these issues, particularly around race and police violence,
Hmm.
is Buddy by Mark Lamont Hill.
Okay.
It's an incredibly approachable
Hmm.
way to introduce yourself into the conversation. I think for super fun, I love the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo
Hmm.
trilogy.
Hmm.
That is a kick-ass cool book. And then, like, kind of in the middle, there's this new book called I Can't Date Jesus by Michael Arsenault.
Hmm.
Michael's a good friend. He's fucking hilarious. And he also talks about what it means to be a gay black man in America.
Hmm.
And he does it so that you're going to laugh, and then it's going to be serious, and then you're going to laugh again. And
Hmm.
like, he has me literally on the train. I look like I look like I'm wilding because I'm just like randomly chuckling at my book.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I actually just came up with two more questions that I really wanted to ask. What's next for you? What's next for Sam and Sam's journey?
Well, I'm really excited. I'm diving into the fall. I think summer's a little bit slower for me, which is great. I'm taking advantage of the time
Hmm.
to work on a bunch of different projects. I'm really excited. We've got some T-shirts coming out soon, so
Nice.
we're working on that. And then I'm really excited to dive in the fall semester and visit a whole bunch of schools and talk to folks
Hmm.
and have the kind of conversations that can help move the needle and set the stage and feel like they can make a difference.
Hmm.
And then go out and actually do that. I think that's going to be really exciting.
Awesome. Awesome. And before we get into these last three questions, how can the audience reach you? How can they learn more about you and follow you and understand more of the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so you can follow me at Sam WhiteOut on all the platforms, Instagram,
Mm.
Twitter, Facebook, SoundCloud, all that, YouTube. You can actually text me, 917-983-4308. And yeah, you can catch me everywhere.
Cool. Awesome. So we're going to get into the last three
Okay.
questions.
Last three. Ready.
First question is, what's been the favorite chapter of your life?
Whew. My last, so I did a extra semester at Villanova,
Hmm.
and my academic work course load was not particularly intense.
Yeah.
That was a poppin' ass couple of months. That was, so I had so much fun. Like
Yeah.
it was great. I was traveling, I was hanging out with folks, dope, going to dope events. It was a good time.
Awesome. Awesome. If you had to give a title to the next chapter in your life, what would you title it?
Uh, there's no point in coming up if you come up alone.
Mm. Wow, dude, I really like that, man. That's really good. Man, that's cool. Do you want to expand on that just like a little bit?
I mean,
Pretty
look, at the end of the
self-explanatory,
day,
but
I feel like, if you're trying to come up in the world, whether it's professionally or whatever, and
mm,
you're going to do so by yourself, you might as well not do it at all because
mm,
it's going to be a hell of a lot harder by yourself.
mm-hmm,
And I don't think that you can do it by yourself and then look back and be proud of the way you did
mm, mm. Amen. Amen. And
it.
last question is if you had to put a title to the book of your entire life up until this moment, what would you title your book?
That's a good one. Be great. Why we got to do this together?
Mm, I like that. I think that really brings together like everything from what we've been talking about. I like that.
That's a great question.
Awesome. Well, Sam, again, thank you so much for your time and your insight. I really think that anyone and everyone who's listening really gained a lot of powerful messages and a lot of powerful insights from you, especially in tackling, what's coming next in their lives and what they can do to really help people. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing. I feel like more people need to be just educated and really listen to what other people are saying. So I really admire the work that you're doing and the amount of effort and time and love that you put into the passion that you're trying to pursue. I think that's
Uh,
really awesome.
I appreciate that. You're making my heart full. You're gonna make me blush. We're gonna reunion soon. Bring the
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
diversity skit, Villanova crew back together.
100%. All right, Sam. Thank you so much. Stay safe. Stay you.
Thank you so much.
Cool.